Hello, chapter 46. Holy smokes. Oh, stinking Lydia. Oh, Lydia. Just want to punch her in the nose. Little spoiled brat. All right, let's get back to chapter 46, or let's start chapter 46, I should say. Question number 1. What did Elizabeth receive? Why did Elizabeth receive 2 letters on the 3rd morning in Lambton? So they've been in Lambton for quite a while, 3 days. And while they're there, she gets 2 letters from Jane. And she got 2 letters from Jane because the first letter, the directions were written very incorrectly. So what would happen when you would go on vacation? Like nowadays, you go on vacation and you tell your family, oh, hey, we're going to Disney World and we're going to be staying at Animal Kingdom's Lodge, right? And so your family knows where you're staying. Well, remember, now you just hop on a plane, you fly 5 hours, you're in Florida. Back at that time, if you said, oh, we're going to go to Derbyshire, it's going to take you days and days to get there. So along the way, it's like a road trip. You're going to stop over here and you're going to stop over there. And I might stop in Texas and San Antonio. And I might stop over here and I might stop in Georgia and I might stop. So you're going to have places set up, and you're also going to have mailed letters ahead to these particular inns, these hotels, asking them to reserve a room for you on this specific night. So your family, when you leave, will have your itinerary, your agenda all planned out, just like you do now if you go through a travel company. So Jane was sending Elizabeth letters because they couldn't like call and say, hey, what's up? And they couldn't text, and they couldn't take selfies and, send IMs to each other or what have you, Snapchats and stuff. So she sent Elizabeth a letter. However, the directions weren't written very well on there. The address wasn't written well. So Elizabeth didn't get the first letter, but she just got the second letter. So she got both of them together, actually. And the first letter was most likely sent when they were at their last location, wherever that was, we don't know. Probably by Blenheim Palace or something. But anyway, so Elizabeth gets the first letter, and as she's reading the first letter, everything's fine, and Mama's doing great, and everybody's hanging out, and we're having a good time. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the letter, Jane says, oh, Lizzie, I have terrible news. From the last time I wrote, last night we received an express from Colonel Foster saying what? Saying that Lydia had run off with one of Colonel Foster's soldiers. And to be exact, who was it? Say it out loud. 1, 2, 3. Wickham. That's right. She took off with Wickham. What the heck? Stupid girl. So, I want to, actually, let me see. I have it underlined that I should read this portion to you. Yes, Colonel Foster informed them that she was gone off to Scotland with one of his officers to own the truth with Mr. Wickham. And they've gone off to Scotland because, remember, we've talked about this. They go to Gretna Green because once you cross the border, you don't have to have family's permission to marry. And I know some of you are thinking right now, why would he marry Lydia? What is Lydia? Lydia has no money. There's no dowry for her. She's not inheriting anything. I don't understand why he would marry Lydia. Great question. And that is something that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but not right now. I will try to come back to that at the end of the lecture. Question number 3. Hold on one second. Oh, and then Jane says, our poor mother is sadly grieved. My father bears it better. How thankful I am that we never let them know what has been said against Mr. Wickham. So Jane's like, oh, I'm so glad we never told our parents that Mr. Wickham is this loser that tries to kidnap all these girls and elope with them. And Elizabeth's like, no, Jane, we should have told them. Because if we told them, then maybe this wouldn't have happened in the first place. They were off on Saturday night at about midnight, as if conjecture, but were not missed until yesterday morning at 8. The express was sent off directly. My dear Lizzie, they must have passed within 10 miles of us. Colonel Foster gives us reason to expect him here soon. Lydia left a few... So Colonel Foster is going to come to Longbourn and talk to Mr. Bennet about it. Remember, Colonel Foster is the husband of Lydia's best friend, Mrs. Foster, Harriet Foster, who's about 17 years old. We talked about that also, and how she herself is just a young girl. And so Lydia is hanging out with this other young, stupid girl who happens to be married to this older guy, but they're just a bunch of dumb young teenagers, present company excluded. You're not young and dumb. You might be teenagers, but you're not young and dumb. Well, some company included. Just kidding. You decide who. Colonel Foster Lydia left a few lines for his wife, informing her of their intention. I must conclude, for I cannot be long from my poor mother. I am afraid you will not be able to make it out, but I hardly know what I have written. And Jane is like, I'm so stressed. Elizabeth, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do, but I've just got to get this letter to you as quickly as possible. So she sends it off without allowing her. Oh, I'm sorry. She doesn't send it off. Yes, she opens up the next letter. Lizzie opens up the next letter. By this time, my dear sister, you have received my hurried letter. I wish this may be more intelligible, but though not confined for time, my head is so bewildered that I cannot answer for being coherent. Dearest Lizzie, I hardly know what I should write, but I have bad news, and it cannot be delayed. Imprudent as a marriage may be between Mr. Wickham and our poor Lydia, we are now anxious to be assured it has taken place. So we don't think that they've gotten married. It's been a number of days after I first wrote to you, and we haven't heard anything of them having been married. So holy cow. Her reputation is going to be ruined. Our reputations are going to be ruined. Continuing, Lieutenant Denny, who is Mr. Wickham's friend in the regiment, says that Wickham basically never intended to marry Lydia at all. If he does take off with her, he's not planning on marrying her. Oh boy. So Wickham is just a fantastic guy once again, and this just puts the whole Bennet family in quite a pickle, to quote my grandmother. Summarize Jane's second letter. Basically, they've been traced to Clapham, which is just outside of London. So they've been traced to London, but London is a huge town, and you can get lost in London. People went there specifically to get lost. She then says that they don't think that they're on their way to Scotland, but maybe they're going to London so they can get married there, because it would be a lot cheaper for them to get married in London. Cheaper because they wouldn't have to travel all the way to Scotland. They wouldn't have to pay these excessive fees that the Scottish people would make them pay, like, oh, you're eloping, so obviously you're doing this without parent permission, huh? That'll be $5,000, as opposed to in London, oh, well, $50. You just have to live in our parish for 3 weeks, and then you can get married for $50. So Jane is saying, I'm sure that is what they're doing. I'm sure that's why they went to London, and I'm sure that's where they are right now. I don't know what to do. I'm stressed out. Dad's still in London. Mom is driving me basically batty. Lizzie, please bring our uncle to our house, because he is the most sensible man that we know, and he'll be able to see this head on, and we'll be able to fight this together as a family. But I need you to come back, please. I'm so sorry to ask you to leave your vacation, but please, please, please. And then as Elizabeth is reading this, she's like, yes, I need to go get my aunt and uncle, who had left to go to the church just to walk around. So Elizabeth had time to read her letters from Jane. And as Elizabeth is getting ready to go get her aunt and uncle, the door opens and in walks Mr. Darcy. Zoinks! Holy smokes. What did Mr. Darcy say? Question number 5. Who appeared at the inn as Elizabeth was going off to find her aunt and uncle? Mr. Darcy. Number 6. What did the person say upon seeing Elizabeth? Bless his sweet heart. I'm going to read this. Good heavens, what is the matter? Cried he with more feeling than politeness. More feeling than politeness. And you're like, okay, sure, just get to the next question. No, that's my lecture, punks. More feeling than politeness. That means that he is emotional. He sees her and he's like, what's going on? Are you okay? But he doesn't have the right to ask all those questions or to truly try to comfort her. So instead, with more feeling than politeness, normally he'd be like, Miss Bennet, is everything well? But he says, great heavens, what's the matter? Then recollecting himself, I will not detain you a minute, but let me go, or let the servant go after Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner. You are not well. You cannot go yourself. So he is taking control of the situation, which really needs to happen. An outside party really needs to look in and go, okay, let me help. How can I help? I'm going to make sure this happens and this happens, because Elizabeth is so emotional right now. On his quitting the room, she sat down, unable to support herself and looking so miserably ill. So the servant has come in, and Elizabeth and Darcy said, go get them. They're at the church, blah, blah, blah. On his quitting the room, the servant, Elizabeth sat down, unable to support herself and looking so miserably ill that it was impossible for Darcy to leave her or to refrain from saying in a tone of gentleness and commiseration, let me call your maid. Is there nothing you could take to give you present relief? So this is question number 6. He wanted to get her maid. He also offered to get her a glass of wine to just kind of relax her nerves a little bit. And Elizabeth says, no, I thank you. There's nothing the matter with me. I am quite well. I am only distressed by some dreadful news, which I have just received from Longbourn. And she's going to start crying. And Darcy's going to be like, I can't do anything. I can't put my arms around her and hug her. I can't say, it's okay, baby. It's okay. He can't do anything. And he's just kind of sitting there like, and Elizabeth, Darcy in wretched suspense could only say something indistinctly of his concern and observe her in compassionate silence. At length she spoke. And she says, I have just had a letter from Jane with such dreadful news it cannot be concealed from anyone. And she tells him, my youngest sister has left all of her friends, has eloped, has thrown herself into the power of Mr. Wickham. She has no money. This is question number 7's answers. What are her reasons for why Wickham would not want to marry her? She has no money, no connections, nothing that can tempt him. She's lost to us forever. So she knows for a fact right here. She's like, look, Wickham just ran off with my sister, but I know he's not running off with her to marry him. There's no way, because she doesn't have any money. He's just going to use her and kick her to the curb when he's done with her. And then she will be ruined. Not only, it says she is lost forever, which remember she would have been. We've talked about that. We've talked about how women at that time would have been shunned by their family, by society. And not only would they have been shunned, but they would have dragged their sisters into being shunned as well. So unless Mr. Bennet shuns Lydia, the rest of the daughters are going to be ostracized from society. Darcy was fixed in astonishment. When I consider, Elizabeth continues in a yet more agitated voice. So now she's pissed. Now she's mad that I might have prevented this. I who knew who he was. Had I but explained some part of it only, some part of what I learned to my own family, had his character been known, this could not have happened. But it is all too late now. She's blaming herself. She's saying, this is my fault. I am the reason that stupid Wickham ran off with my sister. And Darcy says, I am grieved. I'm shocked, but is it certain? Are you positive? And she says, yes, they left Brighton together Sunday night and were traced almost to London, but not beyond. They are certainly not gone to Scotland. And Darcy starts pacing. He stands up. And what's been done? Has anybody attempted to recover them? He is a man of action, which is very opposite of Mr. Bennet. So Elizabeth, if you recall, in the beginning of their acquaintance, when he would like, let's do this, let's do that, she's like, oh, he's bossy. Oh, don't take control. Oh, because she's not used to that. Her father's just lackadaisical, whatever, everything will work out. Where Mr. Darcy's like, no, you can't live your life like that. You have to be prepared. You have to be structured and ready. And so he is, once again, immediately, what's been done? What can we do? What's already happened? And Elizabeth says, my father's gone to London and Jane has written to beg my uncle's immediate assistance. But nothing can be done. I know nothing can be done. How is such a man to be worked on? She's like, what incentive would he have? Even if we found Wickham, even if we found him and Lydia together, what incentive would he have to marry my sister? Absolutely nothing. Lydia's reputation will be ruined, but his won't. He'll just move on and everything will be great. Jerk, stinking man. Just kidding. Men are great. I love them. I'm married to one. He's awesome. Let's continue. Question number 9. Oh, because, okay. She says, I have not the smallest hope. It is in every way horrible. Darcy shook his head in silent acquiescence. He's like, you're right. There is nothing that can be done. You cannot make him marry her. And Elizabeth says, when my eyes were open to his real character, oh, had I known what I dared to do, but I was not, I was afraid of doing too much. Wretched, wretched mistake. Darcy made no answer. So it's silent. He has really not said anything. He said, hasn't anything been done? What has been done? And that's it. And he's just listening to her blab. So I want you to imagine yourself as Elizabeth Bennet. You have realized that you are in love with this man. And all you are praying for is that he asks again to marry you. And he walks in the room. And what does he find? You're blubbering, you're bawling because your loser baby sister who gets her way with everything has ruined your life and run off with this guy. Not only has she run off with Wickham, not only she just run off with a guy, but she's run off with Wickham. She's run off with Wickham. So even if Mr. Wickham were to marry Lydia, Darcy would never offer for Elizabeth again because then he would be related to Wickham. And he hates Wickham. And Elizabeth knows this. It's like a catch-22. There's no way she can get out of this unscathed. There's no way she could get out of this with Darcy having proposed to her. Darcy made no answer. He seemed scarcely to hear her and was walking up and down the room in earnest meditation. His brow contracted, his air gloomy. Elizabeth soon observed and instantly understood it. She knew. Question number 9. What does Elizabeth mean by thinking her power was sinking? He loved her. And honestly, he was probably on his way that morning to propose to her. Truly. And then he walks into this. And Elizabeth realizes my power is sinking, meaning there's no way. No matter how much he loves me, he would never align his family with my family as, remember what he said? Remember what he said in Hunsford? He basically implied that they were white trash. This proves it. My baby sister just ran off with his mortal enemy. The man who attempted to ruin his baby sister. My baby sister ran off with that guy. Darcy would never associate with my family. And she realized that her power was sinking and her happiness was not going to be recognized ever. Number 10, quote, it was on the contrary, exactly calculated to make her understand her own wishes, and never had she so honestly felt that she could have loved him as now, when almost all love must be in vain. Why were her feelings now in vain? As I just mentioned, because Darcy could never marry her. Look at number 11. What had Lydia wanted before she attached herself to anybody? As it states in my notes, Lydia while the contents of the first letter remained on her mind, she was all surprised, all astonishment that Wickham should marry a girl whom it was impossible he could marry for money, and how Lydia could ever have attached him had appeared incomprehensible. But now it was all too natural. For such an attachment as this, she might have sufficient charms, and though she did not suppose Lydia to be deliberately engaging in an elopement without the intention of marriage, she had no difficulty in believing that neither her virtue nor her understanding would preserve her from falling an easy prey. So Lydia wanted excitement. She wanted this to happen. And to answer question number 12, all she wanted was a little encouragement to attach herself to anybody. And we all know those girls. We all know those girls that need a man. They have to be in a relationship and they just throw themselves at the next person. And I'm not belittling or degrading them, but I'm just saying they're out there. They need to have somebody to feel that they are important, that they are significant. And that's Lydia. And she doesn't care who it is. As long as he shows her any type of consideration or affection, she is his irrevocably in her mind. He's the greatest thing that ever happened to her. Let's look at question 13. What were the gardeners worried about, which made them rush back to the inn? They were worried that Elizabeth had taken ill, that she'd become very sick. Question 14, how long did it take them to get ready to depart for Lambton? It had only taken them an hour. Now, I'm already at 18 minutes. I will stop at 20 minutes, but I really want to mention something. The question of why did Wickham take Lydia when she had nothing to offer him in the way of finances, and why he would never marry her? Let's be honest. We all know, and I'm not going to be crass and vulgar and say it because this is Pride and Prejudice, but use your imagination. She was easy. It just said, question 13. Question 12. All she wanted was encouragement. And if a guy paid her attention, that's it. That's all she needed. And Wickham just wanted to not be bored. He wanted somebody to go with him for excitement purposes. But I'm sure that Lydia Bennet was a lot more than he bargained for. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes chapter 46. Please watch for the posting of chapter 47. I know this is a long one. I hope it was enjoyable. Thank you so much. Love you guys and miss you guys. And I'm praying that we can get back to our regularly scheduled classes, our 4A and 4B, Monday through Friday. Have a great day, guys. Love you, Liberty Ranch.